Hey Beauty, in this episode, I will be diving into the 10 principles of intuitive eating. I looked it up because I was curious because I wasn't really sure what intuitive eating was, but it sounded interesting. So that's what this episode is all about. I wanted to remind you of my free gift entitled Holistically Healthy Woman: 4 Steps to Move Away from Modern Medicine for Christians. If you're interested, go to herholistichealing.com/free. I believe that there are so many principles, simple principles that can help with your health. So, if you're interested in improving your health, if you're interested in natural health, if you're interested in moving away from modern medicine, go to herholistichealing.com/free. With all that being said, let's get into the show. Welcome to Her Holistic Healing. Do you want to move away from modern medicine and learn healthier alternatives for your family? Do you want a healthy body? Do you want to live the life that God intended you to live? Hey, I'm Alexandra. I love Jesus. I'm a wife, mom of 3, author, and registered nurse with years of experience in clinical research. When I started experiencing chronic health issues, I was confused about all the different diets and conflicting opinions. I felt anxious because I couldn't solve the mystery of my health until God showed me that He is the source of true healing. In this podcast, you will learn Bible truths and holistic treatments that will help you to stop relying on pharmaceuticals. You can experience true lasting healing that will allow you to make a greater eternal impact in your home and community. So, what do you say we take a break from the mind numbing humdrum busyness? Let's rest in my God, be our healer and helper. About a year or 2 ago, I heard intuitive eating, but I didn't know what it was. I was really curious about it, but I didn't start looking into it until recently. So I thought that I would discuss my first impressions of intuitive eating. There are 10 principles of intuitive eating. This is from intuitiveeating.org. Principle 1: Reject diet culture. Throw out the diet books, food plans, and articles that offer you false hope that food restriction or dieting by any name you call it will grant all of your wishes for a better life. Rather than getting angry at yourself, get angry at the lies from diet culture that have led you to feel as if you were a failure every time a new diet or food plan stopped working. If you allow even one small hope to linger that a new and better diet might be lurking around the corner, it will prevent you from being free to discover intuitive eating. I mostly agree with this principle because I feel like we can get caught up following certain diets. A lot of people insist that their diet is the best. They think that everyone should be following their diet. When it says, rather than getting angry at yourself, get angry at the lies from diet culture that have led you to feel as if you were a failure every time a new diet or food plan stopped working. When I read that, it made me think of my experience because I didn't really follow particular diets super closely, but I did have my own specific principles for foods that I was avoiding and things like that. But when my health started to decline again, I did feel like my food plans just stopped working. But I believe for me, this was ultimately because I was having health issues for many different reasons and not just because of the food that I was eating. This is something that I talk about in my book, Discover God's Wisdom: Exposing 8 Common Myths That Keep You Sick. The second intuitive eating principle is honor your hunger. Keep your body biologically fed with adequate energy and carbohydrates. Otherwise, you can trigger a primal drive to eat beyond comfortable fullness. Once you reach the moment of excessive hunger, all intentions of moderate, conscious eating are fleeting and irrelevant. Learning to honor the first biological signal of hunger sets the stage for rebuilding trust with yourself and food. I do believe, for the most part, we should keep ourselves adequately fed. The last sentence says, learning to honor the first biological signal of hunger sets the stage for rebuilding trust with yourself and food. I somewhat disagree with this last statement because I believe the body was built to withstand hunger for sometimes long periods of time, especially if we're called to fast for spiritual reasons. Some people do intermittent fasting, which is not for everyone, but in the Bible it says when you fast, and then it talks about fasting. So I do believe that God has an expectation that we will fast, and I think that looks different for different people. But I don't think in general this principle is something that we're to follow all the time because as I said, we don't always have to honor the first biological signal of hunger. Principle 3, make peace with food. Call a truce. Stop the food fight. Give yourself unconditional permission to eat If you tell yourself that you can't or shouldn't have particular food, it can lead to intense feelings of deprivation that build into uncontrollable cravings and often binging. When you finally give in to your forbidden food, eating will be experienced with such intensity that it usually results in Last Supper overeating and overwhelming guilt. Okay, I agree with the statement we should make peace with food. I don't believe that we should necessarily think of certain foods as good or bad. I do think that there are times where we feel led by Holy Spirit or we feel like it's wise to avoid certain foods like sugar or processed foods, caffeine maybe sometimes because it's a stimulant. I think it's just kind of a shift in perspective. It says here if you tell yourself that you can't or shouldn't have a particular food, instead of telling yourself that, if you do think that it is wise to avoid a particular food, you could just tell yourself that I want to take good care of my temple. I want to have more energy. I want to be healthier. Therefore, I am making the choice not to eat a particular food. Principle 4, discover the satisfaction factor. The Japanese have the wisdom to promote pleasure as one of their goals of healthy living. In our fury to be thin and healthy, we often overlook one of the most basic gifts of existence, the pleasure and satisfaction that can be found in the eating experience. When you eat what you really want in an environment that it is inviting and conducive, the pleasure you derive will be a powerful force in helping you feel satisfied and content. By providing this experience for yourself, you will find that you'll eat the right amount of food to feel physically and emotionally satisfied. I agree and disagree with this principle. I think that it is good to enjoy our food, to eat it in an inviting environment. I believe that that's something that God would want us to do. But when it says, when you eat what you really want, the way that this is worded, it just seems like we, the principal wants us to just disregard what we think is wise and just do whatever we want, basically. I do think that there is a lot of freedom. God has given us a lot of freedom with what we decide to eat. But just like anything else, when it comes to eating or what we do for a job or what we do in our free time, what we do with our friends, I think we're called to have wisdom when we're going about our day, when we're making decisions. And I think that we should also have wisdom when we are trying to decide on what to eat. Principle 5, feel your fullness. Listen for the body signals that tell you that you are no longer hungry. Observe the signs that show that you're comfortably full. Pause in the middle of eating and ask yourself how the food tastes and what your current fullness level is. I do agree with this principle. When I am eating, I tend to eat really fast. And when we eat really fast, we're not paying attention to how the food tastes. We're not paying attention to how our body feels or if we're full or not. It's really easy to overeat. And then we also miss the enjoyment of the food. So I do think that this is a good principle. Principle 6, challenge the food police. The food police monitor the unreasonable rules the dieting has created. The police station is housed deep in your psyche, and its loudspeaker shouts negative, barbs, hopeless phrases, and guilt-provoking indictments. Facing the food police away is a critical step in returning to intuitive eating. Yeah, I think that some people do act like the food police. For instance, some vegans and vegetarians, not all of them, but some of them go around saying that no one should eat meat, that people are bad if they eat meat, they don't care about animals, things like that. It also happens with people that follow other diets. So, yes, I think this is a good principle to challenge the food police. Principle 7, cope with your emotions with kindness. First, recognize that food restriction, both physically and mentally, can, in and of itself, trigger loss of control, which can feel like emotional eating. Find kind ways to comfort, nurture, distract, and resolve your issues. Anxiety, loneliness, boredom, and anger are emotions we all experience throughout life. Each has its own trigger and each has its own appeasement. Food won't fix any of these feelings. It may comfort for the short term, distract from the pain, or even numb you. But food won't solve the problem. If anything, eating for emotional hunger may only make you feel worse in the long run. You'll ultimately have to deal with the source of the emotion as well as the discomfort of eating beyond comfortable fullness. I mostly agree with what this says. The first sentence, I'll read it again. It says, first, recognize that food restriction, both physically and mentally, can, in and of itself, trigger a loss of control, which can feel like emotional eating. It sounds like people that follow these intuitive eating principles are really against food restriction. But once again, I think sometimes it is wise to avoid certain foods, but I think we need to be careful of how we perceive the food restriction. For instance, if we say we can't eat sugar versus I'm choosing to decrease my sugar intake so I can be healthier, I think that those two different perspectives can really change how we feel. Like if we're telling ourselves that we can't have something, then we're probably going to want it more. But if we're saying to ourselves, this is something that I'm choosing because I want to be healthier, then we will probably feel less restricted. So it's all about perspective. But yes, I think this is a problem for a lot of us when we're feeling angry or sad, or even when we're happy, we tend to eat sometimes. So, yes, I agree that we should cope with our emotions with kindness and find other ways to deal with our emotions than to eat when we're feeling a certain way. Principle 8, respect your body. Accept your genetic blueprint just as a person with a shoe size of 8 would not expect to realistically squeeze into a size 6. It is equally futile and uncomfortable to have a similar experience about body size. But mostly, respect your body so you can feel better about who you are. It's hard to reject the diet mentality if you are unrealistic and overly critical of your body size or shape. All bodies deserve dignity. Yes, I agree with this. We should respect our bodies. All bodies deserve dignity. We should not be overly critical or unrealistic about our size or shape. Principle 9, movement. Feel the difference. Forget militant exercise, just get active and feel the difference. Shift your focus to how it feels to move your body rather than the calorie burning effect of exercise. If you focus on how you feel from working out, such as energized, it can make the difference between rolling out of bed for a brisk morning walk or hitting the snooze alarm. Yes, I mostly agree with this principle. I like to enjoy my workouts and I don't like to do militant exercise. I think that sometimes militant, well, not militant, but I think sometimes rigorous exercise is good for the body, but I mostly agree with this principle. Principle 10, honor your health, gentle nutrition. Make food choices that honor your well being, taste buds, and culture while attuning to how your body feels. Remember that you don't have to eat perfectly to be healthy. You will not suddenly get a nutrient deficiency from one snack, one meal, or one day of eating. It's what you eat consistently over time that matters. It might be surprising for you to learn that what you eat and how you move your body only accounts for 10% of your health. Progress, not perfection, is what counts. I mostly agree with this principle. I think that we should honor our well being. Yes, I mean, we want to find foods that taste good. I think that, well, it also says honor your culture, but if we're honoring the American culture, because I'm an American, Americans eat foods that are very highly processed, and I don't think that is the wisest thing. I'm an Asian American. Asians eat a lot of soy. I think organic soy that has been from, well, if you're eating soy sauce, for instance, organic soy that has been fermented, which is what how soy sauce used to be made or was usually made. It's fermented. I think that soy sauce is good, but usually when you go to a restaurant or you're getting some type of Asian takeout, it has, soy sauce or different sauces with soy. And the problem with soy is that a lot of it has GMOs, but also in general, some other people say that soy can mess with your hormones. So once again, this last principle says that we should honor our well-being, taste buds, and culture. But I think that we should also be wise in what we choose to eat. So sometimes if we think we should avoid a certain food, then that's probably what we should aim for. I do agree with this statement. Remember that you don't have to eat perfectly to be healthy. It's what you eat consistently over time that matters. I agree with that statement. It might be surprising for you to learn that what you eat and how you move your body only accounts for 10% of your health. I really wonder where they got this 10% from. I have learned that, yes, being healthy is so much more than good nutrition and exercise, but I'm just really curious where they got this 10% from. Lastly, it says progress, not perfection, is what counts, and I do agree with that statement. Overall, I feel like I agree with some of these principles. After reading the principles out loud, it kind of strikes me as like basically do what feels good to you. I was listening to a podcast about, I forgot what it's called, but it's a podcast about, one of them was a health podcast, and she was talking about how she was switching to intuitive eating. And then I was listening to another podcast. The whole focus was intuitive eating, and they had this guest on the show who said that she struggled with chronic health issues, but that she also promotes intuitive eating. And she said that when people start with the intuitive eating principles, that's generally what they think, that you can just eat whatever you want. But she said that there are a lot of nuances to it. And she says because of her chronic health issues, she does avoid certain foods. So for me, I think the whole rejection of diet culture is good. That's what I like about intuitive eating. But overall, when it comes to what we eat and everything else, I think it's important that we always go to God first. We go to God wisdom for wisdom because He's the one who made our bodies. He knows what is best for our bodies. He will never lead us astray. I'm interested in what you think about intuitive eating and what you thought about this episode. So if you want to chat, go ahead and join my free Facebook community, facebook.com/groups/her holistic healing. If you have been listening to the show for a while and you appreciate the show, I hope that you will stop and leave me a review on whatever podcast platform you are listening on. And I hope that you will share the show with a friend. I will talk to you soon. Thanks for listening today. If you like what you heard, would you take a minute to leave the show a review? If you want to connect with me, you can join me in my free community. The link is in the show notes, or go to herholistichealing.com. Matthew 11. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls.
For you is easy and my burden is light.
This content is for informational purposes only and is not meant to be medical advice.